and welcome to Melissa's Kitchen. I'm Amy and this is Lindsay. Melissa's not here right now because she's a little pissed off and Renuka's watching Dr. Horrible. Sorry, Mr. Martin, we're going to be duetting it today.
Okay.
So we're making sponge cakes with buttercream frosting and strawberries. First thing you want to do is sift 2 cups of flour.
Flour, whether wheat, corn, or rye, are mostly composed of protein and starch. Wheat flour, though, contains special proteins called gluten. And a reaction occurs when water is added to this wheat flour, and the gluten is then activated and becomes sticky. When baked in the oven, the gluten causes the product to swell and rise and to have a very light texture. This is why flour is the central building blocks of baked goods such as breads and cakes, because of its ability to hold the product together and allow it to rise.
So then after this you want to put in 2 teaspoons of baking powder and sift it together.
Baking powder is actually just baking soda but with acid added to it. And the reason they do this is because baking soda, which is sodium bicarbonate, when it decomposes into, as you can see from the equation, it decomposes into sodium carbonate, water, and CO2. Now, as you can see from the equation, the disadvantage of this is that only half of the available CO2 is released, and more seriously, the sodium carbonate produces strongly alkaline and gives the baked product a bitter and soapy taste, and it turns it kind of yellow. Furthermore, when you digest this, the sodium carbonate actually reacts with the HCl in your stomach, and this causes you to have gas, which is not pleasant. So this is why usually they use baking soda with some kind of acid to neutralize these effects, such as cream of tartar, honey, lemon juice, etc. Now, of course, the shortcut to this is to just use baking powder, which already comes with the H+ ion, and that just neutralizes the unpleasant side effects.
So because we are making a hot milk sponge cake, the next step would be to heat up the milk. Now let's move over to the stove because that's where you heat up the milk. Okay, so you want to preheat the oven at 350 degrees for the cake. For the milk, you want to put the heat on medium, and then you want to pour about a cup, probably a little more than that. And you're supposed to take it off when it boils. Okay, so your next step is to put in 4 eggs, and you want to beat them until they're foamy.
And this is not into the flour mixture, just by itself. So the egg usually serves one of 2 functions. Beaten egg white is used like baking powder to give the dough that nice, light, airy texture. This is achieved because egg white, or albumin, contains lecithin, a protein which lines the outside of the air bubbles created when the egg was beaten, and so prevents them from collapsing during baking. In unbeaten whole eggs, lecithin acts as a binder, holding the cake together. In addition, eggs can be used as emulsifiers, moisteners, instead of simply adding water, and nutritionally it's a source of fat and all essential amino acids. So how it works as an emulsifier is that when baking a cake, you're making water, air, and oil stay mixed when they clearly don't want to be mixed. This is because oil and fats are nonpolar, so they don't have that positive and negative end that water does, so they tend to float right on top of water. However, you take the phospholipid membranes in eggs, which contains a hydrophobic and hydrophilic end, and this means that when you grind up these cell membranes and mix in a bit of oil, you get these layers to open up and make a single membrane around the oil droplet with the hydrophilic side out facing the water. This prevents other oil droplets from combining with this one and allows the mixture to stay mixed.
So now that the eggs are foamy, we want to add in 1 cup of sugar. And after you add in that 1 cup of sugar, you want to continue beating it on high until it's kind of thick and lemony colored.
So sugar is not just used to sweeten the baked product, it's also to create that nice brown crispy crust on top of the cake. So sugar can be caramelized at high temperatures, so in the baking process, and this is actually really complicated. A simple way of explaining it is that the amino acids in the sugar start off the process, and an organic chemical called an aldehyde, which is a double bonded oxygen and a single bonded oxygen attached to a carbon. This is changed into a different type of chemical called the unsaturated aldehyde.
So then after you add in the sugar and it becomes that thick and creamy lemony colored thing, you want to add in 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract and then continue mixing it. Okay, so now you want to put in 2 teaspoons of vanilla. When you put in the vanilla, continue mixing it on high, and then you want to decrease the speed to medium and then add in the milk on a steady stream.
Smells like vanilla. Mommy.
So now that that's done, you want to quickly beat in the flour mixture.
So when you're beating the batter, you have to be careful not to overbeat, because when you beat, you're actually trying to promote the gas formation reaction. However, when you overbeat, the gas bubbles will not be retained long enough to change the structure of the baked product. And this problem can, however, be overcome by using rising agents that only become active when heated.
So now that it's done, you want to pour it into your pan.
Which has been pre-coated with vegetable spray to avoid stickiness.
Yeah. And then you want to put it in the oven and leave it in for about 45 minutes. So now for the buttercream icing. You want to cream together half a cup of butter, half a cup of shortening, and 4 cups of confectioner's sugar, 1 cup at a time.
So I guess while she's doing that, I'll just explain what's happening in the baking process. So in baking, the rate at which CO2 is produced and the continuity of CO2 production is very important. If too much CO2 is produced initially and the reaction ceases, removal of the cake from the oven will cause the cake to drop. Some baking powders, such as Sure to Rise, has 2 different acids to ensure the fast initial reaction and continuity. Baking powder is very widely used ingredient in cooking and baking, such as buns, fruit loaves, crumpets, pastries, etc. But self-raising flours has also become popular, and this is just because they're easy to get. The role of the laboratory, so we made all this by hand, but you can just take cake mix and make sponge cake, it's easy. This is because the commercial manufacturers use laboratories, and they start testing these baking ingredients to make cake mixes and breads. You can go ahead. I'll just... The activity of baking powder, baking soda, and cake mixes is checked by testing baking and testing the amount of CO2 that is released from the standard sample. There's a method called Chittick's method where you add sulfuric acid to the samples and measure the amount of CO2 produced in a gas burette. Atomic absorption spectroscopy is used to determine the concentration of metal ions present in the product. The main ions which are tested and controlled accurately are sodium, potassium, calcium, and phosphorus, as an estimate of acid phosphates, and flame photometers can also be used for this purpose and are used by smaller industries. And this is how the industry ensures that the cake mixes that we buy are not dangerous, and they are healthy, I guess. Well, I can't call cake healthy, but like as healthy as you can get.